Welcome to the next installment of the Miami Group Sierra Club Virtual Backpack Series.
And then we're going to be ready to jump right into our topic for the evening, backpacker dinner in a baggie. Let me start off by just introducing our presenters for the webinar. My name is Nancy Ball, also known as Crunch, that's my trail name. And I've been camping and hiking for my whole life, backpacking and leading trips since 2005, both domestically and internationally. And this past year, I launched my new business, Planning and Leading Adventure Trips. My company name is Summit Trek and Travel. And we have also with us Barry Randall. Barry?
Hi, my name is Barry Randall, otherwise known as Aardvark, and I'm currently the Miami Group Sierra Club's Outings Committee Chair, which means that we help organize all sorts of outdoor activities, hikes, backpacking, paddle sports, etc. At least we were before the pandemic struck. So hopefully again, we'll be doing that soon again after this. And I've been doing this for more years than I care to say. So, Brian?
Hey everybody, Brian Wolf. I am one of the co-owners at Roads, Rivers, and Trails. We're in downtown Milford, Ohio. So I know I've met some of you guys there. If not, come on by and meet us sometimes. My first backpack trip was along the Appalachian Trail back in it was a through hike and finishing back in 2007. But since Roads, Rivers, and Trails is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, and part of the store's mission really is the continued education and community events. So again, looking forward to having those more in store, but happy to be along with the Sierra Club on the Zoom calls in the meantime. So nice to meet you guys and looking forward to it.
Thanks, Barry and Brian. The fourth person on our team is Denise Tingle, and she's not here with us tonight. Her trail name is Pippi Longstocking, and she's the fourth instructor who's been working on these videos with us this year. So moving right along, we're going to start off with a quick poll. So I'm guessing if you're attending this webinar, that probably means that you've tried some prepackaged commercial food and that you're ready to try something different. So here's a quick poll just to give us an idea of what motivated you to check this out. So looks like Barry has launched the poll. Thank you, Barry. We'll give you a couple of minutes. No, not a couple of minutes. That's too long. I'll give you a minute. We were trying to figure out how we could play Jeopardy music during this part, and we're going to work on that. So when we come back next year, we can add that as one of our bells and whistles to the new and improved class next year. I see it starting to pop in there. Good. And I see a real variety of answers. I'll give you just a few more seconds, like 10 more seconds, and then looks like we're getting close to having everybody in there.
Nancy, what I like is that the lack of food in commercial packages is not one of the...
I noticed that too.
Plenty of food in there.
Yeah, I kind of thought that that might be the case for someone, but
I don't know. I've never heard anyone complain about too little food in one of those guys.
They're pretty generous for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like
what do you think? Wrap it up?
83%. Yeah, let's go ahead and close it out
right.
there, and then we'll share the results. All right. So you can take a look there. Okay, the answers really are spread out. Looks like the number one reason people gave is that they want to lighten their pack. And the truth is, these are all valid reasons. I do think it's interesting and just kind of, affirming that nobody said that there's not enough food in the commercial packages. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move this away, and then we're going to talk about some of this. Regarding the weight, saving weight on your pack, one thing I learned as I was putting this this presentation together, my part of it is that that's changed a little bit recently. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but the weight differential between the commercial prepared food and doing like no cook The weight differential isn't as great as it was even just a couple years ago. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Okay, so let me move along if I can make this go. Tell you about my own thinking. I first started preparing my own freezer bag meals because of a dairy allergy. There are today more dairy-free options than there were when I first started backpacking, but even today, the number of choices are limited enough so that once I started backpacking a lot, I got tired of them. Two other reasons that I wanted to make my own meals are that for me, the commercial meals always have way too much food, way more than what I need to eat or want to eat. I was the only person in our group who would gain weight every time we went backpacking. We climbed Kilimanjaro and I managed to gain weight on that trip too. So anyway, it was more food than I needed for sure. And most of them also have a lot more sodium than what I need or what I want, even if I only eat like half the bag of food. So for several years several years ago, I started making my own freezer bag meals. And I just would, make them like my own do-it-yourself mountain house meal and just rehydrate it with hot water, and life was pretty good. It was pretty sweet. Then I started doing some longer trips and including some section hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And on our first 100-mile backpacking trip, one of my friends brought only food that did not need to be cooked. And I was kind of intrigued by that. So we took a week to do that section. And for that whole week, she carried no stove, no pot, and no fuel. So while my kitchen looked like what you see on the left, her kitchen looked like that. There was like virtually nothing in it. And I asked her lots of questions about it. I looked at the food she was eating and it all looked pretty good. So the only thing that was a big downer that I just couldn't quite get around in my head was I just didn't want to give up my morning cup of coffee. And so for a while, I continued doing my own freezer bag meals, but using hot water and carrying my stove and fuel and pot, actually my jet boil. But then one day I was standing in line at Starbucks waiting to pay $5 for my iced coffee and literally smacked myself in the forehead when it dawned on me that I could drink my coffee cold, and it actually was pretty good. And as a matter of fact, I found out that Starbucks even makes instant iced coffee. It's made to be mixed with cold water. So that was enough to convince me to go ahead and try the whole no-cook option. So using the same idea, but using cold water instead of hot water. So I decided to give it a try, and actually I've been really happy with it. I found another benefit of the no-cook food is that it saves time. You don't have to wait for water to boil, and there's very little to clean up. You actually don't have dishes to wash, or virtually don't have any to wash. There's not much to put away when you're finished. And even though cold soak meals have to soak a little longer, you can do other things while they're soaking. So you're saving time. So here's what my kitchen looks like now, just a spork and a cup. I do still carry a lighter, but that's for starting fires. So they don't really count as part of my kitchen anymore. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about no-cook cold soak meals, and also about the same kind of do-it-yourself meals using hot water. And I think Barry said in the last webinar when he talked about dehydrating food, that freezer bag cooking is basically a do-it-yourself mountain house meal. The freezer bag meals that I usually take use ingredients that can be prepared using either hot water or cold water. One difference between the commercial meals and what I make is that I usually bring the meat separately, largely due to the fact that I haven't found good dehydrated or freeze-dried meats that rehydrate easily. But we'll talk more about protein sources in a few slides. So basically, if you're talking about freezer bag cooking, whether it's hot water or cold water, you start with lightweight, calorie-dense ingredients, and you put them in some kind of a waterproof container, like a Ziploc plastic bag. When you get to camp and you're ready to eat, you just add water to it and stir and wait. If you use hot water, the wait time is usually like 10 to 20 minutes. If you use cold water for cold soak meals, it can be 10 minutes to 45 minutes. The only real difference between these two, that, as you see them listed here, is the length of time that they need to sit and cook. They're not really cooking, but sit and soak. So some comparisons between cold soak freezer bag, hot water freezer bag, and commercial prepared meals. So first of all, for the freezer bag cold soak, some of the pros. It's easy to accommodate special dietary needs because you put in them what you want. For the same reason you can control the amount of sodium, you can control the portion size. There's not much to clean up. It's usually less expensive to put your own together than to buy the commercial meals. There's very little trash, just the plastic bag that you put in your trash bag. And it can be soaking while you set up or break down your camp. So you don't have to sit there and like watch the fire or watch your stove while there's water heating, because there is no stove. And they're not having to carry a stove or fuel or any kind of a pot to heat your water in. On the negative side, you do need to plan ahead to start soaking. So I have some recipes that take 10 to 15 minutes, so that's not much. I have some that take 45 minutes. And I've seen some online where they advise you to take like an hour to an hour and a half. But you can actually add water to that meal at your last water stop or rest stop before you ever get to camp, and let it start soaking ahead of time to offset that. Another disadvantage to the cold soak is just that sometimes it's nice to have something hot to eat or drink, especially if you're camping in cooler weather. So if you're using the freezer bag cooking with hot water, a lot of the same pros. It's easy to accommodate special dietary needs, control the sodium and portion size, not much to clean up, it's less expensive and very little trash. But the added benefit of it is sometimes nice to have something hot to eat or to drink, and you can have that if you're bringing something to heat water with. But a few more on the negative side. The stove and fuel do add weight and volume to your pack. There's a little more hands-on prep time, in that you need to stand there with your stove while you're heating water. It's not a good idea to fire up your stove and then go set up a tent or hang a bear bag or something. And there's a little bit more to put away after you've finished preparing your meal and eating it. So those two options compared to commercial meals. So the commercial meals, first of all, it's very convenient. You just buy what you want and it's ready to go. The only pre-trip preparation that you have to do is to shop for it. And because of what I was alluding to earlier, sometimes if you're talking about long trips, you're going to be out, if you got to carry more than like 5 days worth of food, because those meals have gotten lighter, you may not actually be saving weight anymore by leaving the stove and what have you behind to do cold soak. So when I was getting things ready for this trip, I touched base with my friends at RRT to get some information on some of the prepared meals that they had there. And Brian gave me weight and nutrition information on several of the commercial meals that they sell. And I was surprised to find that they're a lot lighter than the commercial meals I have in my stash at home. That was a big surprise. That Brian said that some of the manufacturers have changed to recycled packaging, which is not only more eco-friendly, but some of it is also lighter. So of the 5 examples that he gave me, the average weight of those 5 was only 4 ounces. And that's about half of what the average weight is of the freezer bag meals that I've been carrying myself. So part of the reason for that, again, I think I said this before, but it has to do with the protein source. So I use things like beef sticks and those foil mylar pouches of chicken or tuna, and those weigh more than freeze-dried ingredients do. But still, having said all that, even at about 4 or 4.5 ounces per dinner weight more, that does not offset what I save by leaving my stove and fuel and pot behind unless I'm carrying more than like 5 days worth of food at a time. So, okay, that was kind of a long explanation there, but an important note. So the cons or the disadvantages of the commercial meals is that unless you're on a longer trip, the stove and fuel do add weight, and in any case, they add volume to your pack. You have to spend a little more time with, firing up your stove and what have you than you do with the no-cook version. They typically are going to cost a little more money. You have more trash to dispose of. And the biggest disadvantage for me, at least, is that you don't have control over the ingredients, the amount of the sodium or the portion size. Those are all things that you can control when you make your own. So a couple of notes about the freezer bag itself. First of all, it doesn't have to be a bag. You just need something with a good seal that can hold water. If you're going to use a bag, these Ziploc bags work really well, but they do need to be either freezer grade or microwave grade if you're going to use hot water in them. The others, like just a regular sandwich baggie, are a little too flimsy to put boiling water in. So here we have at least 3 examples of things that you can use. One is the Ziploc, it doesn't have to be Ziploc, but any freezer grade bag that has that zip seal, like you see up in the top left-hand corner. You can carry your food in it. You can rehydrate your food in it. You can eat out of it, excuse me, and then you just toss it in your trash bag when you're finished. Same is true for the second one you see, the Zip and Steam, which is one of the microwave bags. Carry your food, rehydrate it, eat it, throw it in the trash can. And then on the far right, in the top right-hand corner, we have these stasher bags. These are silicone, and they are reusable, which is a very nice feature. They're also heavier, like quite a bit heavier than the Ziploc bag. So you probably wouldn't carry one meal per bag. Instead, you'd probably carry one of these Ziploc stasher bags and reuse it for each day of your trip, which means that you still have to carry your food in something different. And it also means that you're washing dishes and it weighs a little bit more. But the good thing is that it would not end up in a landfill when you're finished. So pros and cons to each of these, but give you some ideas. Another thing I know some people use are empty plastic jars, like peanut butter jars. I haven't tried that. I think one downside to that might be that they take up a little more room in your pack, and you also need to clean them each time you use them, sort of like the stasher bags. But any of those would work well to carry your food and to rehydrate it, and you can eat right out of them too. So give you some idea of the ingredients for these freezer bag meals. These are some of the ingredients that I use for mine, and all of the dry ingredients that are on this list can be rehydrated with either boiling water or using the cold soak method, either one. And by mixing and matching the base with the different proteins and changing up the vegetables and the seasonings I use, I can have a pretty good variety of meals and tastes, which kind of keeps it from becoming monotonous. I personally use instant rice or couscous or ramen noodles for the base. And then for protein, usually it's either the chicken or tuna or salmon that come in those foil mylar pouches. I like to use summer sausage for some of them, or beef sticks. And I also use nuts for protein. Then there's a variety of vegetables that I'll use, dehydrated vegetables and seasonings, just to keep it all interesting. What I've tried to give you on here is just some information about the weight of these items, how many calories for the quantity that's listed on the side, what the sodium content is, and then this right-hand side, the calorie density. So how many calories per ounce? More calories per ounce, obviously, the less your food bag is going to weigh for the amount of food that you need to keep yourself fueled. I do want to mention here on the ramen noodles, so the packages of ramen noodle soup, the soup mix is really high in sodium. I don't remember off the top of my head now, but it's like double what the recommended daily allowance is or something crazy like that. So I don't use those. I just take the noodles themselves out and I throw away the soup mix. I just use the plain noodles. I'll use chicken bouillon and then a variety of different dehydrated or dried herbs to season it instead of using the soup mix that comes with it. So I have some recipes here for you, some things that with a little trial and error and some experimenting I came up with. And all of these are made using things that are on that list I just gave you. So this first one here, couscous with nuts, cranberries, and rosemary. This is one of my favorite ones. I really like the way it tastes. And it's also the most calorie dense of the meals that I make, with weighing only 6 ounces and having 625 calories. That's largely because I'm using nuts instead of one of those heavier packages of meat for protein. So you can see it has couscous, cranberries, either almond slices or walnut pieces, the chicken bouillon, and rosemary. And if you're going to cold soak, it's 15 to 20 minutes. If you add boiling water, it's only 5 to 10 minutes. Couscous will rehydrate really quickly. The next one I have is rice with chicken and dehydrated broccoli with thyme and sage. This is another, these are all tasty. These are all ones that I like. This is one that I make with broccoli that I dehydrate myself. I just started dehydrating some of my own ingredients, and broccoli was one of the ones that worked really well. For this one, I used one of those Mylar packets of chicken for the protein, which makes it weigh a little more. And also notice this one uses instant rice. Of the 3 main ingredients that I used for base, the ramen noodles, the couscous, and the instant rice takes the longest to rehydrate when you cold soak it. Some of the recipes I mentioned before that say they let them cold soak for like up to an hour and a half, those are all ones that had minute rice or instant rice of some sort in them. But for me, when I've tried this, I think it works pretty well after about 40-45 minutes. It tastes just as rehydrated to me as it does leaving it longer. Still recommend that you leave yourself plenty of time just in case if you plan to cold soak. So this one weighs 8.8 ounces, 475 calories, and you can see the difference in time depending on whether you cold soak or use boiling water. All of these are going to be in the PDF of the presentation that you can download later if you want copies of these. So if anybody's going crazy making notes, don't worry about that. This one, ramen noodles with tuna and squash, and basil and oregano, which sounds like a weird combination, but actually tastes really good. So squash was another veggie that worked really well when I dehydrated it myself. And again, the caution about the ramen noodle soup itself is really high in sodium. So I recommend you don't use the soup mix unless you just really want a whole lot of salt. Actually, the chicken bouillon adds nice savory flavor to it as it is. So yeah, I think I covered all the ingredients on that one. Cold soak 20 to 25 minutes or boiling water about 10 minutes. Get a little heavier, 9.35 ounces and 398 calories. And then the last one I have to share with you here, the rice with summer sausage, mushrooms, tomatoes, and rosemary. This one's the heaviest because of the weight of the summer sausage. But it's also the tastiest because of the summer sausage. And a note about that sausage, when I do this, I get a 7-ounce summer sausage and I cut it in half and I only use half for this meal. If this gives you the number of calories that you're looking for and you're only going to use half, just be aware that you need to figure out what you're going to do with the other half. And that means either fix it right away and eat it, or perhaps you want to divide it into 2 pieces and vacuum seal it before you leave on your trip, because it will spoil, especially in warm weather. Excuse me. So all of these recipes I just gave you are tailored to my calorie needs, which may be very different from yours. I have a slow metabolism. I'm not a really large person. And I only need, when I'm backpacking, about 2,000 calories a day, which I know some of you people like Brian is gasping right now because I think he starts at like 4,000 calories a day. But I don't need that much just to fuel my body. I just don't. So all these recipes are put together for me. That doesn't mean you can't use them, because obviously you can increase the ingredients, double them if you need to. And that's the beauty of doing these do-it-yourself meals, is that you can make them to suit your appetite, your calorie needs, and your taste, as well as any special dietary needs that you have. That's the great thing about the whole do-it-yourself thing. So we're going to pause now for questions, if we have any in the chat box to address, or if you've got any you want to type in real quickly, and then take a couple minutes for that. Do we have any questions in the chat box, guys?
We did have one that Barb threw out there. She was just putting it out to the group. She was asking if anyone has tried bean thread noodles.
I
don't know if that's something, Nancy, you've run across.
I have. I've seen them in the store, but no, I have never tried them. So I don't have any experience with that. What was that?
Me neither.
But I'm going to make a note of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There is I did have in mind that I wanted to try some of the Japanese rice noodles instead of the ramen noodles, just thinking they might be a little more nutritious. Ramen noodles are it's a great source of carbs, but that might be about all you're getting out of them. It kind of helps fuel you for the next day. But if anybody who's listening or anybody else who's on the Zoom has tried bean thread noodles, I hope that you'll weigh in on the chat and tell us all about it. So if we don't have anything else, we're ready to move ahead, and I'm going to turn things over to Brian now.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. And those recipes alone, I think were worth everybody logging in. It's pretty awesome. Mouth-watering, right? All right. So choosing what to eat. So here are 5 things to think about when you're deciding what food to take with you backpacking. First, does it meet your nutritional and caloric needs? The food in your pack is the gas in your tank. When you are carrying a pack, hiking over rugged terrain for long miles, it's important to get enough fuel. If you run out of gas before the end of your day, you're more likely to stumble, lose your focus, or have an accident. And sometimes I feel like the Snickers commercials are speaking directly to the hiker version of me and getting a little cranky. So I relate to that one. How long will it keep? Some people like to bring fresh fruit, cheeses, and things like hard-boiled eggs. Nancy mentioned the summer sausage. Those are nice for early in the trip, but keep in mind that you won't have a refrigerator, and fresh foods can spoil in just a few days, especially in warmer weather. On the flip side, in the winter, watch out for foods that can freeze so you don't, or warm it up so you don't break a tooth there. Think about how much it weighs. Weight is always a factor, of course, when backpacking. One way to keep your food weight down is to carry calorie-dense foods. So kind of talked a little bit about that, and we'll kind of get more to it. Is it within your budget? You'll pay a little bit more for the convenience of commercial meals, which some of you have mentioned. And do you like it? Of course. Unfortunately, overlooked sometimes. You'll be hungrier on the trail than on a leisurely day at home, which means you'll probably be less picky about what you eat. But there's no reason to take food that doesn't make your mouth water. Taking food you like will help make sure you eat enough to keep your body well fueled. So how do you know how much food you need when you're backpacking? So here's another pool for you. Barry, if you don't mind launching pool number 2. All right, so how much is, right, we'll give you a little time to answer. Less choices here.
I still wish we could play the Jeopardy theme song. These long pauses are just, they feel hollow.
I know.
People are answering quickly. We're 90% already.
Right, yeah, a little bit more unanimous this time too.
Yeah.
A lot on that bottom row. That it depends. Double the calories, 2 servings per meal, 2 pounds per person per day. Awesome.
I think that's about it. Wrap it up.
Yeah, that's good.
And you guys did great. No fooling, right? So the answer is it depends. Things that will affect your calorie needs include your body size. Your metabolism is going to be different per person. Your trip is going to play a huge part in it. What is the weather like? It's going to change how many calories you need to burn through, how many miles you're going, how much elevation gain you have per day. So, overall trail difficulty and length is all going to change the calories that you're burning. And then, of course, the pack weight. So again, going back to exertion. So your pack weight versus somebody else's pack weight. So all of those things are really going to factor in there. So whether you heard that you need at least 5,000 or 2 pounds or double what you need, there's a whole lot of different sayings. The truth is, there's no one answer that is right for everyone. Nancy, I kind of liked your your comparison between you and your husband there.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So I mentioned before, I burn calories very slowly, but Jim, my husband, has the metabolism of a hamster. So he'll burn close to double the calories that I do when we backpack together.
My wife just looked at me and was just shaking her head. So I think we're in a similar boat, like you called out before. So you'll get much less energy from 2 pounds of Timor stew than you will from 2 pounds of peanut butter. Weight per day is probably not the best way to plan. If you're new to backpacking, bringing double your normal daily calorie intake is a responsible place to start. If your hike will be extra strenuous with elevation gain, or you're carrying a heavy pack, bump that up proportionally. You probably won't get it exactly right on your first trip, but with experience, you'll begin to dial in on your fuel needs. All right, so as you're considering nutritional value, look at the calories and sodium. Even though you sweat a lot and may need more sodium and electrolytes in your system when you backpack, you may be getting more sodium than you realize and maybe more than needed. So you notice the chart here, as Nancy was saying before, we were kind of looking at some different meals. We combined that with some DIY meals that Nancy makes, and you can kind of look across the chart compared to some commercial meals there. And of course, the sodium highlighted, as there is a pretty stark difference, especially with some of those commercial meals there in the 1600s, whew, right there. So they're good. So we haven't listed protein on this chart, but you should be sure to include protein sources in every meal. If you plan a long through hike, check nutrient labels to be sure you are getting at least the recommended daily amount for adults. So that's at the 1,500 milligrams there, right there. Right, so choosing calorie-dense foods will help you get the most fuel for the least weight. So sample calorie-dense foods include a lot of pictured here: daily dried fruits, nuts, Fritos, rice, nut butter, beans, salmon or tuna, dark chocolate, cereal bars, power bars, beef jerky, and summer sausage are all great. The only thing really from the list or from the picture that I've not backpacked with would be the avocado.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's backpacked with that. That would be a great one. I haven't figured that out, although I'm sure you can.
Yeah. So the Fritos on that list, that's my secret weapon. But I love to have extra Fritos for just those days when I just need a little extra boost.
That's a great one.
And avocados are great. If you haven't tried it, you really should. They're a little heavy, but put them on a taco or something, and it's a great meal. Yeah,
it's luxury.
Yep.
Other no-cook food options for breakfast, lunch, and snacks up here. So again, just kind of give you an idea, calories per ounce. This was fun. The first time I did this was actually along my Appalachian Trail through hike, and I was learning everything for the first time, and we realized we were way under eating, and for that reason, tiring out pretty quickly. And so we started looking at the weight of everything, the calories of everything, and dividing it up and figuring out exactly how we could pack in more. So I still have one of these charts, just like Nancy made here, in the back of my journal. So it's kind of fun.
Wow, I should have taken your chart.
I didn't think about it.
I didn't either.
Well, mine had more like honey buns and whatever else too. So going for calorie-dense foods will help keep your pack weight down, but remember that choosing a variety of foods will help make sure your nutritional needs are being met. It doesn't do you any good if you're not eating it all, right?
Right.
So good food adds to the enjoyment of a backpacking trip. Choosing foods that taste good to you will help make sure you eat enough to keep your body well fueled. And DIY options allow you to season it to your taste. So whatever you take on your next trip, we wish you bon appetit.
Very good. So I'll pick back up here, Brian.
Okay.
So we hope this presentation gave you a few new food ideas, and we've got a third poll for you. Probably most of you are used to this one by now. It's our way of gauging whether or not we gave you something of value. So Barry, if we can launch the third poll. And while you're completing this last poll, I'm going to mention again that there'll be a link to where you can find a PDF copy of this presentation on the Sierra Club website. And within a few days, there should be a link on that same page to a recording of the webinar if you want that. Again, this is our 20th and final webinar for 2020. I think it's really appropriate that we ended up with our last two webinars are on food right before we break for Thanksgiving. So we will be breaking from this point now, but we'll be back in January with some new topics. So you want to keep an eye out on Meetup or the Miami Group website or Facebook, wherever you normally find us, so that you won't miss out on those. And I'll tell you, the first one in January will be on January 7th, and Barry is leading that one. So Barry, would you like to just tell everybody what that one's going to be about?
Sure. You know, what we're going to do is take a little break from backpacking. We figure everyone's now geared up, have some great lightweight camping gear, some cooking gear. You know how to cook on the trail. You've got some great recipes. So we're going to talk a little bit about what else you can do with all that. And the first topic is going to be bike packing or bicycle touring. So there are some wonderful tours across the state and across the country. And if you've never tried bike packing, it's a great adventure. So we're going to cover that.
Cool. Thanks, Barry. That one I'm really looking forward to. I look forward to all of these. This has been a lot of fun to do. So we're going to start our live Q&A in just another minute or so. We'll unmute you so that you can ask your questions live. But we'd also like to ask you, as we're planning for next year, it's a good time for us to hear from you on what sorts of topics you would be most interested in hearing. We're going to recycle some of the early ones for sure, for people who missed some of the early basic backpacking things. But we want to mix in some new topics as well. So we'll be beginning it again in March. And any ideas you have to share with us in the chat box would be much appreciated. So a couple more things. If you enjoy the outdoors as much as we do, we would love to have you join us exploring, enjoying, and protecting this beautiful planet. And some easy ways to do this are become a Sierra Club member. If you like the work that you're seeing and would like to help support it, you can make a donation to the Sierra Club, the Miami Group Sierra Club. Please do join our meetup if you haven't done that yet, so that you won't miss out on any future webinars or the live in-person events when we get to start them again, and or consider becoming a volunteer. Also, in terms of being a volunteer, so we're outings leaders for the Sierra Club, and if you're already an experienced outdoors person and you have skills that you'd like to share, be willing to share with others, we'd love to have you join us on the outings committee. So we're always looking for outing leaders who have a passion for sharing their experience with others. And right now we're doing that virtually on these webinars, but someday we'll be back out there on the trails and waterways in person again. And we really have a lot of fun. So we'd love to have you join us. These webinars have been happily brought to you by Roads, Rivers, and Trails, our local independently owned outdoor outfitter in Milford, Ohio. By Miami Group Sierra Club, part of the country's largest grassroots environmental movement, and by Summit Trek and Travel, your connection for adventure travel. So we're going to start the live Q&A, and next I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you all, we can see each other better. If you need to leave, we certainly understand that. But if you have questions or would like to hear other people's questions, we invite you to stick around. And I'm going to figure out how to change it so that you all. Okay. All right. Is it done? Okay. Thanks, Barry. or did I just undo what you did? You're muted, Barry. I think I maybe just remuted everybody. I'm going to let you do it this time. I'll stop. I'm not clicking anymore. You do it.
I think we're good.
All right.
All right.
So you can now unmute yourself if you have questions that you'd like to ask.
We had a couple in the chat while people are thinking. One question that was raised was why we don't talk more about cooking over a fire. And I gave a short response in the chat that most backpackers that I know anyway don't usually rely on cooking over a fire because it's inherently somewhat unreliable, depending on the weather, depending on whether there happens to be fuel at your campsite, depending on whether the regulations of the area even allow fires. They just maybe not be possible. there's generally a fair amount of work involved, right? Collecting wood, and if you want to burn a fire down to coals, which is the best thing to cook over, that usually takes some time. So I think there's a lot of reasons why most backpackers kind of steer clear of cooking over a fire. It is a lot of fun, and honestly, as a kind of fun to do thing, that if the conditions are right, you can bake some bread or something like that. It's a lot of fun, but generally most people don't rely on it. I don't know, Nancy or Brian, if you have anything to add to that.
The only thing I'd add to that is just that, if you're really, in some places, if you're following leave no trace principles, especially, some places, well, fires maybe technically are legal. They're not always the best idea. So for sure, cooking over a small backpacking stove is way better for the environment than trying to cook over a fire. So I would add that to the list of reasons.
Yep, good point.
I'll just add that it is really fun to cook over a
It
fire
is.
for like on a more car camping, base camp kind of experience is when I'd be more likely to do it.
Yeah. We had in the chat too a little discussion of Nido versus the traditional dried milk, and for those who maybe missed that, certainly my preference is Nido for any kind of backpacking recipes that call for milk, because Nido actually has fat in it, whereas the dehydrated milk that you typically buy in the US is non-fat. So it just plain tastes better.
Gosh, I almost feel like I hate to end just because this is our last one. It feels like we should have some sort of playing taps or something. I don't know. But it's been great. We appreciate all of you for joining us. And I don't know if anybody's got any last words they want to say before we sign off. Otherwise, we'll be looking to see you in January. I hope that you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving and enjoy the holidays. And we'll see you next year.